Hello, praise the Lord. I am Reverend Marilyn Thornton, and I would like to share Lesson 5 titled Heed the Call for Help from this Vacation Bible School Program 2020 Vision, Seeing Clearly Through Christ. The theme for this lesson is community service, and it is based on Acts 16 verses 9 and 10. And Matthew 25, verses 31 through 46. With the key words, help, serve, and service. We are living in a season with multiple calls for help. The COVID-19 virus has struck Black and brown people with a vengeance, and in the early days, calls for help were often denied. People were sent back home from emergency rooms to die in their homes. Essential workers, often Black and brown people, put themselves at risk daily without the needed help of protective clothing and masks. The answer to the call for help with testing has been spotted and politically tinged. Protesters have relentlessly put on masks and taken to the streets, demanding help and relief from injustice and police violence. They want justice for the police murders of George Floyd in the street and Breonna Taylor in her home, and just so many others. How do Christians provide service in the midst of this pain? How do we heed the call for help as we continue to shelter in as much as possible? How do we serve God and humanity in this crisis? Paul knew how to heed the call for help. Acts 16 verses 9 and 10 tells us that while he and his crew were traveling in Asia, Paul had a vision, an experience provided by God that helped him to see clearly how to heed the call. A man of Macedonia pleaded with him, "Help! Come over here." Paul and Silas immediately set out to cross the Aegean Sea into Europe in order to help. In other words, when the call comes, answer it right away. Do what you can to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. And what shall we do? In Matthew 25, Jesus tells a story about sheep and goats, a gathering in time when those who followed his way will be separated from those who did not. Now, a sheep whose wool has been shorn does not look much different from a goat. You cannot tell the difference by what the sheep or goat looks like, but by how the sheep or goat behaves. That's what Jesus was talking about. Behavior. The sheep were the ones who provided service to others. They were the ones who had heeded the call for help. When someone was sick, the sheep attended to him or her. These days, the best way to tend to the sick is to protect others and yourself by wearing a mask. So simple. Just wear a mask. It is an expression of love and community service. Like the man in Paul's vision, there are always people pleading, "Come over here and help us." In Matthew, the sheep were the ones who provided community service by feeding the hungry and bringing water to the thirsty. People have lost their jobs during this pandemic. Some are struggling to feed their families. Some can't even go food shopping because they are sick. There are churches and individuals that have heeded the call for help by providing gift cards at grocery stores. We can drop off groceries or meals on the doorstep of a home or contribute to a food bank. Send water to thirsty protesters who, like Habakkuk, are standing on the wall, waiting for justice on our behalf. Just imagine that it is Jesus out there. Jesus who is in need of help. At the beginning of the pandemic, children were sent home from school. Churches scrambled to figure out how to do vacation Bible school just as we are. And now is the time to figure out what to do concerning opening the schools in the fall. But what about the kids? If you listen closely, you will hear their cry of help. We miss our lessons. We miss our friends. We don't have internet service or computers. What would the sheep do? What would the goats do? Well, Jesus told us that the goats are the ones who could not, would not, and did not hear the cry for help. They just threw up their hands and said, "Those are not of mine. What am I supposed to do?" Whether it is physical, spiritual, or mental hunger, the goats just walk on by. They did not do what they could do. They did not see Jesus in the people crying out, the image of God upon their souls. And so, the goats did not answer the call to serve. Now, a new word that I learned during this pandemic is vector. It was explained very well by Dr. James Hildreth, an epidemiologist and president of Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee. He said, "Don't be a vector. A vector is an entity, usually an animal, that carries the virus to other entities. A human vector carries the virus from person to person and place to place." Dr. Hildreth explained that one person can infect 4 people. Those 4 people infect 4 more people, and so on up into the millions in a small amount of time from that original one person. That's some multiplication. By washing our hands, wearing masks, social distancing, we comply with his call for help. Don't be a vector of the coronavirus. But Christians, however, we must comply with the call for help in creative ways. We can multiply our service to the Lord by phone, by Zoom, by FaceTime, by gloved, covered, and or hands-free delivery, not only of food, but of whatever is needed: books, computers, clothes. We must become vectors of service, heeding the call for help throughout our communities. Through community service, we show that we are Christian and help others to see clearly through Christ. Now, does the pandemic excuse us from serving the community? How might community service look different during this time? You may know someone who is in need of help. It may even be you. What will empower you to cry out for help or to heed the call for help? There are more questions in the student book. There's even a puzzle that gives those sheltering in something to do as a family. Get one and other items associated with this program at www.rhboyd.com. Look for 2020 Vision, seeing clearly through Christ.